So I thought I'd answer some really common questions that you get as a comedian, and I've done comedy for about 11 years. And by far, the biggest question people ask is, have you ever gotten heckled? And the answer is yes, it does happen, but not as often as you think. I don't know why people ask this question. I don't know if it's just like if you think of a stand-up comedian, you think of, oh, people yelling at them, like trying to interrupt, but it doesn't happen that much. Like I've been doing it 11 years. I can count the major times I've gotten heckled probably on one hand. But yes, it does happen, and it's not something that you like as a comic. It's not something that you look forward to. Speaking for myself, of course, some people don't mind. Some comics are totally fine with people yelling stuff out, heckling, and they'll happily, combat those people. From my perspective, I don't like it because you're getting up there as a comedian, you're giving a performance, you're giving something that you have written out and practiced beforehand, and the goal is for it to seem spontaneous on stage. Now, when a heckler comes in, they are trying to disrupt that. And there's a difference between heckling and when a comic does what we call crowd work, and that is asking somebody in the crowd a question like, hey, who are you? Where are you from? Where do you work? That's fine. That's something that the comedian chose to do. So they're completely still in control at that point. They're trying to add an element of spontaneity into the performance. Now, when a heckler comes in and yells something, that's an issue of control. Like they're trying to take control of the situation away from you, the performer, and kind of wrest that from you. And what you need to be aware of, if you've ever done comedy or you're thinking about it and you're worried about hecklers, you have to go right at them. Like you have to challenge them immediately, and you have to take that power back away from you, because at the end of the day, they really want to be up there and they just don't have the guts to, but they're going to try to mess with you to try to get some of that attention back onto you. And again, it's not something planned. It's not something you should have to prepare for, but you do. So even if it's just saying something as simple as, hey, how many people in the room want this guy to shut up? The audience will side with you because you're up there. They will give you props for being up there, being the comedian who's up there, rather than just some random dude in the crowd who is yelling. But again, in terms of actual heckling, it doesn't happen that much. What happens more commonly than anything is somebody who's had a little too much to drink and they just are talking. Like they might be having a loud conversation, they might be chiming in on your act, and they might be trying to help. And so it's not that they're mad at you or they're trying to like mess up the show. They're just, we call them helpers. Like they're just like, yeah, or they'll just sort of add something to the end of your punchline, and it doesn't work ever because they're idiots and they shouldn't be up there. So a lot of the times it's just a drunk, or it's somebody who's just talking a little bit too loud and disrupting things. So I wouldn't really call that heckling. It's more of just being a distraction. But there are real hecklers out there. The second time I ever did stand up, it was in my hometown, Wichita Falls, Texas, and I got heckled real bad by this one guy who just started yelling at me. And he was like, get off the stage, like classic heckling. And I didn't know what to do. I just kept on going with my act, which is the worst thing you can do, because then you just seem like a robot. Everybody knows you're getting heckled. Everybody expects you to deal with it, but you're not, so that's a problem. And what happened at that time was I ignored him, hoping he would go away. He didn't go away. My sister actually came over from another table and started screaming at him to shut up. And then the band I was opening for also asked him to shut up. And I think he did. I don't know. I didn't deal with him, but it was only the second time I'd ever done stand-up, so I didn't know how to handle it. So it was a mistake. The best way to deal with a heckler, go right at them And all bets are off. I will get straight vicious with a heckler. I will talk about their looks, anything I can. If somebody heckles you, take the gloves off, go right. Don't be Kramer, don't go that far, but get as mean with them as you want to, because they're out of line and they deserve to be put in their place, and it's your job as the performer to get them shut up. Or again, if you don't have anything clever to say, just be like, hey, how many people want this guy to shut up? Everybody will applaud and be like, cool, that's democracy, dude, shut up. And if it gets worse or the guy keeps on going, security has got your back, or the bartender or whoever, because you're performing, they're not. So the bar or the club or wherever you're at will eventually intervene, but it's better if you handle it. One time I got heckled and I just said, hey dude, I hope you get hit by a car on the way home and die. And everybody started laughing. And I said, you know what? You're gonna come up to me after the show and I'm gonna say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, but I really did mean it. And everybody loved it. And that guy shut up for the rest of the show. That's how you deal with a heckler. Recently, I think last year, there was a guy who was yelling stuff out at a show. And then I had a bit about being divorced. And I said, is anybody divorced? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, we know, dude. We already know. And everybody started laughing at him and he got mad. And this almost never happens. But he came up to me after the show and kind of was like being aggressive, but like in a drunk way. Like he tried to buy me a drink and I was like, no thanks. And then finally he was like, in England, we've got a word for people like you. It's called cunt. And I was like, we got that word here too, dude. But eventually my friends intervened and like, it was not a big deal. He was just drunk and that's what happens a lot of the times. But it can get worse. And we've all seen heckler videos. I've seen friends get heckled. One comedian friend of mine said something about the heckler's wife and the heckler jumped up like he was gonna fight my friend. So that was very exciting. But most of the time, it doesn't really happen. It's, again, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows over the years. It's not really a major deal, but it is something that you have to keep in mind as a performer, as a comedian. You shouldn't have to in an ideal world, but we don't live in the ideal world. So it's just a live thing. It's like if you watch a wrestling match and some idiot like tries to jump in the ring, they have to deal with it. That's what this is like. Just try to, if you're trying comedy or you're thinking about it, try to keep calm and try to just think of something really funny to say in the instant. Even if it's not that funny, the audience will give you credit for it just because you said something, and they'll side with you. They will always side with you. Again, even if you're not killing, even if you're bombing and not doing that well, the audience will side with you because you're up there, the heckler isn't, and everybody kind of understands that the heckler is just being a jerk who really wants the attention that you're getting. So hecklers are the worst. I don't like them. I don't think most people like dealing with them, because if you're getting up there and doing stand-up, you're getting up there because you have written some jokes that you want to tell, that you've written, that you've prepared. It seems spontaneous at the time because that's the whole point of stand-up comedy, but it's not. It is prepared. You are performing, and a heckler disrupts that. So, unless you're just like one of those comics, and that's fine, one of the comics who doesn't mind it and likes to get in there and mix it up with it, and that's cool too. But I think most comics I know don't like hecklers. If you're ever at a show and you think you're helping by yelling stuff, you're not. Everyone hates you for doing it. Don't do it.